All right. Welcome to the latest installment of Chemistry Lessons with Mr. Marshall. This one is coming to you late at night from my couch, so I'll try to keep it very short. This lesson is going to be about elements, compounds, and mixtures, which is how we organize the different kinds of matter. First thing we need to understand is the difference between atoms and molecules. All matter here on Earth, or most matter here on Earth, is made of atoms. Atoms are the smallest building blocks of the elements. Those are the things on the periodic table that we talked about. The word atoms actually comes from the Greek word atomos, which means no cut. Atomos. This was an idea that was first popularized, or not really popularized, by Democritus about 400 years BCE. That's 400 BC. And nobody liked him. He was a jerk. He went around laughing at people. And so nobody believed him for the longest time. He said, well, if you were to cut a piece of matter smaller and smaller and smaller, eventually you'd get to something that was so small you couldn't cut it anymore. Tomos, no cut. And everybody thought that he was full of it. And so there was this other guy named Aristotle, who you might have heard of. And Aristotle said, no, 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 no. You can always just keep cutting it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller forever. And so Democritus laughed at him and said, you can't be serious. At some point, you can't cut it anymore. And so he was the first one that had this idea of atomos. And as his name might tell you, he actually was kind of an interesting guy. He came up with the idea of democracy. So, you know, not such a bad guy, but nobody liked him. Um, Atoms are the smallest building blocks of matter, at least in chemistry terms. But molecules are when atoms are bonded together to make groups of atoms. And these are permanent groups. These are bonded. They don't just fall apart. These are permanent things, molecules. So down here at the bottom of my screen, I have a picture of red atoms, which are individual little balls. And if you look over on the right, you have groups of atoms that are stuck together. This makes molecules. There are basically two kinds of matter: pure substances and things that aren't pure, and we call those mixtures. Pure substances are further broken down into elements and compounds. Let's talk about elements first, they're the simplest. So, elements have only one kind of atom. Only all the atoms are exactly the same. They cannot be broken down by chemical reactions. They cannot be broken down by hitting them with a hammer. They are as simple as it gets. Now, I've got two pictures down here. They can be single atoms, or they can be molecules of atoms. But what you'll notice is in each of these little boxes down here at the bottom of the slide, the atoms that are inside the box are all completely identical to each other. They have only one kind of atom. And one of the things we mentioned before was that there are only 118 types of atoms. That's all there is. The periodic table, at least the ones that we've discovered so far, uh, there's 118 of them, and they make up all the elements that we have here on Earth. It's possible that one day we'll discover bigger, heavier elements. The problem is the bigger they get, the more unstable they are. So all of those big elements that are down at the bottom of the periodic table, they fall apart really fast, and so um, they uh, they are not uh, found in nature. So the ones that are found on the periodic table, 118 elements, that makes up all of the different kinds of atoms. The other kind of pure substance is called compounds. Now, this one is confusing for a lot of people. Compounds are molecules, not single atoms, they're molecules and they're made up of more than one kind of atom. So how could they possibly be pure? Well, the difference is they have only one kind of molecule in any particular sample that you're looking at. So if you look at the box there on the left, you have purple atoms and green atoms, and every single molecule in that box has that little triangular shape like one of those fidget spinners. These can be broken down into their elements. If you were to break the atoms apart, or break the molecules apart into their individual atoms, you could make them into elements. But it can only be done by chemical reactions. They are pure because those molecules are permanent and they're all the same unless we do a chemical reaction on them. So the one that's here, this is H2O, the red and the white, H2O, and you have a sample of water where every single molecule of water is exactly the same. That's why it's pure. Things that aren't pure, things that are not considered what we call substances, these are called mixtures. And there's two different kinds. See the commonalities here? Two different kinds of matter, two different kinds of pure substances, two different kinds of mixtures. The first kind of mixture is homogeneous mixture, and that would be, here's a little example on the left. This is where homo means one or the same. Homo means same. And so homogeneous means that it looks exactly the same. Wherever you look inside that mixture, it looks exactly the same. Hetero means different, right? It means more than one. So heterogeneous, if you look right here on the right where I have this little heterogeneous mixture, you can see there's some purple solution there, and then there's also some greenish blue chunks of something inside there, and that's cobalt hydroxide, which is a solid. So it's a mixture, and you can see there's a very clear difference between the liquidy part and the solidy, chunky part, and that's what makes it heterogeneous. So let's break this down a little bit more. Homogeneous mixtures are not pure substances. Homogeneous mixtures look pure. They look pure because they are mixed together so well that you can't look at it with a microscope or with your naked eye and tell where the chunks are. The chunks are so small that the chunks are as small as molecules or atoms, and they're made up of more than one kind of particle, but the particles are all mixed together. Right? And by particle, what I mean is either an atom or a molecule. So if you look at this picture on the right-hand side here, we have red atoms, we have blue molecules those are elements because that's the same atom there, but they're molecules, and we also have these little triangle things, and they're all mixed together. So it could be atoms, or it could be molecules, or it could be both mixed together. The key thing here is, and this is why it's not considered a pure substance, is because you could mix in a little extra of this or a little extra of that, and you'd still have a mixture. It doesn't have a definite composition. It's a variable composition. If I was making Kool-Aid, I could put in a lot of powder, or I could put in just a little bit of powder. It would still be a Kool-Aid mixture, but it would have a different composition if I made it weak or if I made it strong. So solutions like Kool-Aid, or my favorite solution, which is coffee, are actually homogeneous mixtures. If you look in coffee, hopefully, unless it's got like the sludge at the bottom of it, hopefully it's nice and brown all the way throughout, and you can't look at a part of the coffee in your cup and see if it's different here or there. It should look all the same. So that's homogeneous, same. Now, coffee is actually an interesting example because if you were to go to a fancy coffee shop and get a latte and have them do a special design on the top, that would actually be a heterogeneous mixture. Heterogeneous mixtures, hetero means different, and they're chunky mixtures or they have layers. and you can see the different parts of the mixture. Now, we can see them with our naked eye if we're talking about like a latte or a cookie, but we're also talking about something where if you had a microscope, you could look in the microscope and you could see it. Atoms and molecules are way too small to see with a microscope. And so a homogeneous mixture is way too small. The pieces are way too small to see with a microscope. So if you have a microscope and you can see chunks in the microscope, even if you can't see it with your naked eye, that's still considered a heterogeneous mixture. So if it has layers or if it has chunks where there's different things that you can see happening inside that mixture, it's heterogeneous, even if those chunks are so small that they're in a microscope. So it's not well mixed. Imagine if you took a spoon and you stirred up that coffee, that latte, really, really well. That beautiful design on the top would go away, and it would all just be sort of, light brown, and it would look the same. You can put milk in coffee and mix it really well, and then it looks homogeneous. But if it's not mixed really well and you have layers or you have design, then it's heterogeneous. So here's what it would look like on the atomic scale. A heterogeneous mixture would have two different kinds of particles, either molecules or atoms or both. And so you can see the purple ones here, and then you can see down here at the bottom of this little square, you can see a chunk of green ones that is all kind of off to one side. If they were mixed together, like this one in the middle, and you had purple and blue mixed together perfectly like that, it would be a homogeneous mixture. That's it. Thanks for your time.